ready. Hit it. Excellent.
Okay. Okay. And now I can advance too.
Excellent. So, legal disclaimers again. Thanks for being with us, everybody. It's a Sunday night. Can you tell? We didn't even have a wild weekend. And then next slide, Deb. So here's Debbie. You'll be seeing her picture all evening due to video difficulties. So Deb, tell us about yourself, please.
Sure. Well, nice to see everybody here tonight. I'm the founder of Road to College and the Paying for College 101 Facebook group. And I love partnering with SoFi. We've been doing this for several years, these types of presentations on lots of different topics. But my goal has always been to help educate families on the whole process, which means kind of the admission side and the financial side, to make sure that people are making as informed and educated decision as they can about where their student applies to school, where they choose to go to school, and how they're going to finance school.
Excellent. Excellent. So let's jump into the agenda.
Okay, so we had our extended introductions.
Yes, we did.
And tonight we're going to talk about merit scholarships. I know that's why a lot of you are here, and I see that we have a whole range, but a lot of people are here who with us junior. Somebody already mentioned they're a rising senior.
Sophomores, we have them sophomores here.
Yeah, and it's the perfect time to learn about what merit scholarships are. We're going to talk about in your search for merit scholarship, why it's important to know your EFC and your college budget, and then go into how you build a balanced college list. And then I'm going to demo a tool that we have created and continue to improve over the years called College Insights, which hopefully you'll feel really kind of cuts down the work that you need to do to find the colleges and to find the merit scholarships.
Excellent. And then from my side, SoFi is pleased to present this presentation to you tonight. As Debbie and I were saying during our technical difficulty period, we have partnered with Road to College for about 3 to 4 years. Welcome to all the SoFi at Work members, our SoFi members, high school counselors, and parents. We're glad to have you all here. And our goal really is to help people realize their dreams through financial independence. And part of that means, how do we get your kids through school into college and at the right tuition price? Let us show you the tools that are there for you to help kind of negotiate some merit.
And I just wanted to add, as Melissa said, we've been doing this for a few years, and we actually this year there are 4 different sessions. We already did one. And the first one we did was about appealing financial aid. And even though a lot of people on here are parents with juniors and maybe even sophomores, it would be worthwhile and interesting for you to go back and watch that session, because it helps you to know what's coming ahead, and it actually might impact how you build your students' college list. So I would just make that suggestion to go back and look at that video, which is on the SoFi YouTube channel. Is that right,
Absolutely.
Melissa?
Yes, absolutely. Great point. And Debbie and I would both like to say that we've put our kids through school. So I have one child left. He's a senior. I negotiated his merit using tools like Debbie's and articles that her group had put out, and it really did work. Now, you're not always going to get everything that you want,
right?
But definitely doing your homework and planning in advance is key.
Okay, so let's start off with what merit scholarships are. And to the woman, I think it was either Victoria or Veronica, who made the comment earlier about how she wants to use all the opportunities she can to lower the costs of college. I start out with this slide, even though we're talking about merit scholarships, to kind of show you why it's so important to learn about merit scholarships. When you're paying for college, really there's 3 major buckets, right? You've got your family contributions, which is going to come from savings, whether it's 529 or just money that you've set aside that you want to use for college. And then potentially if you can, cash flow and take money from your income as your student is going to college. Then there's free money, which is what we're going to focus on tonight, all right? And the 2 major areas of free money are financial aid, which is need-based aid, and that's going to be based on your EFC and how, quote, needy you might look to a college relative to other people. And then the other big source of money that comes from colleges are our merit scholarships, and that's why we're going to dig in deep about that tonight. The other sources, of course, are private scholarships and government grants. I have nothing against private scholarships. It's just a different tactic, and it takes a lot of effort to compile the money you might need through private scholarships. So what I say is I'm always trying to go like, the 80-20 rule. What can I do that's going to get me, 80% there? And that's what I feel merit scholarships are. But once you've exhausted merit scholarships, it's perfectly fine to go towards private scholarships, but it's just personally not my recommendation of the first place to start. And then lastly, once you've exhausted whatever your family can contribute and you've done your best through getting whatever free money you can, of course you've got to make the decision if your student is going to go to that school, if there's still a gap, how much money you're going to borrow. And the sources of where you can borrow are always first the government for your student. That's what Melissa mentioned earlier. You want to max out whatever the federal government allows your student to borrow. And then after that, you would have choices about whether to borrow through private lenders like SoFi or from a Parent Plus loan. And as we meant, that is a whole nother topic that Melissa and I do in a few weeks.
For another night.
Right, for another night, but
Yeah.
just know it's there. Okay, so I kind of alluded to this, but the searching for merit scholarships goes hand in hand with building your student's college list. One of the phrases that we use a lot is your student can't get money from a college they didn't apply to, right? So I see a lot of stories kind of at the end of the journey sometimes from families that say, oh boy, I didn't know, college XYZ gave that much merit. Maybe my student shouldn't have applied there. I mean, that's nice to say, but that's kind of like after the fact, right? And that's why all you guys are here tonight, is to learn this before the deadlines happen, because you want to make sure that you're doing all the research to know what the options are to build a good college list. Your student the college list is so important, as again, another phrase we use is the college list drives everything, right? The college list is going to drive your family's final cost of college, because it's wherever your student, whatever college is on the college list, the colleges your student will apply to. Ultimately, they can only get into a school that they apply to. So that's going to determine their final set of schools that they're going to choose to attend. And that ultimately where they attend is what's going to drive your cost. So this all kind of came from the college list, right? And then the other piece of the college list, where particularly if you're a junior, family with a junior, you're kind of about to embark on this for the summer, is it also determines how much work your student's going to have to do to fill out applications. So every application you add to the college list, it may or may not add to their workload, and that's going to be driven by essays. But putting this college list is really very strategic. It's going to determine your costs. It's going to determine what schools your student might get merit from. It's going to determine how much work your student has to do, and then making decisions about which deadline your student might want to apply to. Maybe they apply to an early decision. There's a lot of things to think about if they go that direction. Definitely apply to early action. We're going to talk a lot about deadlines and why they're important, but you can see that, again, approaching how you put the college list together should be very strategic, with a lot of thought and a lot of good research.
Excellent.
So what is merit? There's actually a few different, they all kind of are the same, but I just want to make realize that you might hear it being referred to as merit aid, merit scholarship, a tuition discount, and they're all the same. And at its most basic level, it is a discount. It is the college's way of attracting certain types of students that they want to their school. And in return, they're giving them a scholarship, and the scholarship is really a discount on the tuition. Nothing wrong with that. I personally don't care how you want to call it, aid, scholarship, or discount. I just look at it as the free money, and it's something important to factor in to the schools that your student applies to, and ultimately estimating what your college costs are going to be. Again, just, it should be apparent, but I like to reiterate that a merit scholarship is not dependent on your financial need. A lot of colleges, you won't even have to, if you choose, you don't fill out any financial aid forms. If you're a family who you don't feel like you're going to get financial need, but you can still get merit. So they are truly not looking at the financial. Well, I shouldn't say, I do have a slide a little later that talks a little bit about what they're looking at, but it's not dependent. It's usually not a criteria about whether or not you'll get merit. It's not going to be based on whether what your financial need is. Another actually benefit of a merit scholarship as opposed to need-based aid is that when the merit scholarships are awarded, and the biggest time that they're awarded is, the high school senior applying and they're coming in as freshmen, is that the scholarship is renewable for 4 years, as long as your student, which is the fourth bullet point, usually has to meet a minimum GPA requirement. That may or may not be difficult, but it's something to just be aware of at a little later in the process when you and your student decide that they're going to go to a certain school with a merit scholarship. You should just be aware what that minimum GPA requirement is. For some schools, could be pretty easy, could just be a 3.0. At a few schools, sometimes they do make it more difficult, like a 3.5, and that is their way of screening out some students who might not make it, but just be aware what that requirement is. The other reason why I want to emphasize that these scholarships are renewable is I've worked with some families where they've reached out with questions and they ask, should I get money as need-based aid or should I try and get money as merits? And the benefit, again, if you don't think you're going to have a big fluctuation in your income while your student's in college, the benefit of merit is that it is guaranteed every year. Financial need, you're going to have to fill out the FAFSA every year, which is fine. And depending on what your EFC turns out to be, your need-based aid may fluctuate.
And EFC, Debbie, is what for those of people that are fairly new to the process?
Sure. Expected family contribution. And that is the outcome of when you fill out the FAFSA, which is the aid form that the government asks you to fill out every year.
And what they determine, like you need to pay out of pocket. One of the things that Debbie and I are really big on is the 4-year plan. And so as you're building your school list, as you're kind of building a spreadsheet, which we'll talk about, of the offers that you get, Debbie's point about merit aid only being awarded once is an important one. I think sometimes families think, well, I didn't get any merit freshman year, then I have a shot at it sophomore year. And in fact, merit aid is given out, as Debbie mentioned, for multiple years upon acceptance to the college. So where your financial situation may differ, you may have say a job loss or an income decrease for, on the financial side, the merit is what gets locked in and is renewable. So that's the one thing you want to keep track of too, as you're looking at schools.
And just to add what Melissa's just said, the other time when this comes up is that sometimes students want to transfer in from another school. Again, nothing wrong with that. They may get merit, but usually they do not get the same level of merit that is offered to a freshman. That's one thing. The second situation, and again, I'm not saying to not go this route, it's just to think through the full 4 years, as Melissa was saying earlier, is that sometimes there's a discussion about, well, maybe my student will go to community college for 2 years and then transfer in. And there might be a lot of other reasons why they want to do that. But from a financial standpoint, you should just understand that, again, they may not get merit transferring in as a junior. And so you may have paid less at community college, but you may end up paying more for those last 2 years at a 4-year college. So just things to know ahead of time and think about as you're doing your research. One other little con about merit scholarships is that they don't increase. Usually whatever the student is offered, in this acceptance period from high school to college stays the same for the 4 years. And unfortunately, as we're all aware, college tuition increases every year. So that does kind of eat into the value of the merit scholarship, but they're still very worthwhile to go after.
Excellent.
So there's 3 types of merit scholarships. And I have to say, this is not an official categorization. This is just kind of as, we look at merit scholarships, they tend to fall into these 3 types of scholarships. And I'll give you examples of all of these, but they're basically, the first one is what I call automatic. And usually the student applies to the college and there's nothing else they need to do. So that college is looking at every application and potentially deciding whether or not that student will receive merit. A lot of the schools that have what I just termed this automatic merit scholarship also show a grid on their websites, and I'll show you an example of that. And so they make it pretty obvious that if you have a certain GPA or test score level, they are going that will translate into a certain amount of merit. That's great. We love those types of schools that are so transparent in how their process is going. But there are still other schools that give, again, the quote, automatic merit, but they may not tell you what all their levels are. So the reason I bring this up is, if a school has a chart, absolutely, look at it. Particularly, again, I saw some families here who have sophomores. I mean, that's great to start to research now. Look at these charts, because if the chart is dependent on a GPA and a test score, it gives you and your student a goal that you might want to reach. And I have this every year. A family will write in and say, my student just missed the next level of the scholarship. Either they got a test score that might have even just been like 20 points below what the level is, or they missed their GPA by just a tiny bit. And that's really frustrating, right? And the schools, they put that information out there. They're not usually that lenient about giving you the next scholarship amount up if you didn't meet the criteria. So again, for the families who are early enough and their students can impact their GPA, start looking at what those GPA numbers are. And definitely for any families here who have a student that is taking the SAT or ACT, look at the schools that they're considering, or you'll do some research, which I'll show you about in College Insights, to see what test scores equate to certain types of dollar amounts.
Hey, Deb, we had a question in the Q&A that said that someone had heard that schools are only giving merit for the freshman year. Have you ever heard of that?
No, I honestly haven't. I mean, it's really more what Melissa and I were talking about. They will give it to you as a incoming freshman, but it's usually awarded, you get it for 4 years. Again, unless that student might have missed a requirement to receive it again for sophomore year. But usually when they award it, it is for all 4 years. But again, you have to meet certain requirements to continue to receive it every year.
Awesome.
Okay. And then there's competitive merit scholarships. I'll show you some examples, but basically what that means is that your student will most likely have to fill out an additional application. And again, this goes to my earlier slide where we talked about the college lifts. One of the things it does is it drives the amount of work your student's going to have to do. So in addition to another application, the application usually comes with an essay. So, the schools are kind of screening students to say, if you want this money, you're going to have to jump through another hoop. And that hoop is to answer more essays. They, may not be as difficult as essays to write as the Common App essay and the YS essay, but just know that there might be additional essays for merit scholarship money. And the third grouping of scholarships is related to if your student has a talent. And usually that talent is about music, theater, something or art. So something where they might have to audition or send in a portfolio. And again, the reason why I bring it up, and I have at the bottom, it says keep track of deadlines, particularly for competitive and for talent-oriented merit scholarships. They will have deadlines. They will have deadlines of when the essay and application is due. The talent one will definitely have a deadline about when you need to schedule potentially an audition or a portfolio review, and you don't want to miss those deadlines. They're usually pretty hard and fast. Unfortunately, it's the one thing in this whole process that deadlines, you can't roll them back. You miss a deadline, unfortunately, you probably have missed that opportunity. So for all the families here, and you're definitely kind of on the younger side in terms of, having 10th graders and 11th graders, you're here at the perfect time to learn this and to know that you really have to be on top of the deadlines.
Absolutely.
So here's an example of that automatic merit scholarship that I talked about. And I happen to have been keeping track of Miami University since 2020. So I have a sample of what their grid looked like in 2020, which was obviously right before COVID, 2021, and then this year, 2023. I'm looking at this now. It'd be fun. I should probably do this with a lot more colleges, because once they change their website, you don't necessarily know what the previous chart might have looked like. But as you can see in the bottom right, this is from 2020, again, before COVID. And Miami University probably was not test optional then. So they did have the requirement of you had to have a certain test score and a certain GPA to receive their merit scholarship money. But then, with COVID and, majority of schools are now test optional, you can see 2021 and 2023 is they went solely to GPA, although in some schools, they will have a separate grid that will say for a test score. So they might have one grid that's for GPA and for students that are test optional. And they might have another grid that is for test scores if your student is submitting test scores. But in this case, Miami University is just showing the GPA. And the thing I wanted to point out, and this is very particular to Miami University, they have a little footnote that said that this GPA is the weighted high school GPA. Not every college uses the weighted high school GPA to determine their merit scholarship amounts. And not every college even tells you what type of GPA they're using. So this is another area where you're going to have to dig. And maybe you can look on their website, but quite honestly, I find that the easiest thing to do is, if it's unclear, is to ask your local admissions rep, if there is one, if you know who that is already for the school, or call the admissions office or email them. And just say, I wanted to understand which GPA you were using for determining merit scholarships, and how are you calculating this? And again, I'm bringing this up because I've dealt with a lot of families and students where they didn't know how the college was calculating their GPA for the purpose of distributing the merit scholarship money, and they were calculating it differently, thought from their calculations that their student was at the top level, and it turned out that they were at the level below, which you can see in some of these cases, can be the difference of, full tuition versus, could be the difference of, potentially $10,000 or $15,000, if you miss a certain level. So
one of the questions that you've mentioned the importance of deadlines. One of the questions in the chat is, where are those deadlines posted? How would they know what the deadline is?
Good question.
Yeah.
So again, on the automatic merit, there's usually not a deadline just specific for merit. It is usually the deadline for whenever the application is due. I'm going to go to the next one, and I will show you where you can see where some of the deadlines are. Here, we can go right now. So here's an example of competitive merit aid, right? And so I say here, watch the deadlines. This is a real case. This is University of Southern California. Their deadline for merit scholarships, they actually moved it. It used to be December 1st. It is now November 1st. Okay. So if your student is applying to University of Southern California and you want to potentially have them considered for merit scholarships, they have to send in their application by November 1st. But USC's regular decision deadline is actually January 15th. So if you didn't know that they had an early deadline for merit and your student was just applying regular decision, they would not have the opportunity to be considered for merit. So to the question about where are the deadlines posted, I wish I could say that there was one major source that had them all, but the reality is that colleges are constantly changing their websites, and you have to look at the college's website on the page where they talk about merit scholarships. If there is a different deadline, they will tend to have it listed on that page. But to cover all your bases, I also say ask the college, just verify, just say, I want to make sure, is there a different deadline if my student wants to be considered for merit versus just applying, regular decision? And all of these, and I'm going to call them like little questions, are great questions for your student to ask the college. And it gives them practice, and it shows that to the college that your student is really interested in the school. It's that one, could be a form of demonstrated interest. So,
this is just my personal opinion, but I know a lot of parents see this as a rite of passage of your child becoming an adult. So you're requiring them, like, you manage your stuff, you keep the list. But when it comes to the financial part, especially in the freshman year, I highly suggest you're hyper involved. Don't leave it to the student to know these deadlines and know the dates, because it's very overwhelming for them. Even just getting into college and taking the tests is scary. So absolutely, once they get in, you can start like kind of cutting the cord a little bit. But I really think, the parents from the get-go should be involved in the planning for this.
Oh, absolutely. And, I completely agree with what you said, Melissa. You could view it as a great training opportunity, right? You're training your student how to manage a complex system. I mean, there's just no way of kind of like, of lying about that. It is kind of complex, and keeping track of information and research and deadlines. They've never encountered this type of work before. And this is why we're parents, to teach them how to do it. But Janet asks, what is the full tuition scholarship at Miami University? I don't have in front of me what Miami University's tuition is, but whatever it is these days, I'm going to guess it could be in the 40s, for the full year. If your student was awarded a full tuition, then it would be the full amount of whatever their tuition is, they would receive. So that's these merit scholarships can be very valuable if you find, not every school that offers a merit scholarship is offering a full tuition. But if you can find that school that does, it can be, significantly valuable.
And a question from Melissa, not every school offers merit either.
Yes. And I'm going to show you, yes, in College Insights, yes, where you can see which schools are offering merit.
Excellent.
And that's a great point. Both Melissa Bassett and Melissa Moore.
Not tonight. The Melissas are on.
Right.
All right, let's jump ahead, Deb, to EFC, just because we're running a little bit behind because of our technical.
Sure. Okay. So why is it important to know your EFC? And this kind of goes a little bit to, not all schools are going to offer merit, but basically your expected family contribution, and you can estimate it now. I recommend one place to do that estimation is really to just go to the College Board website. Don't love the College Board for everything, but they happen to have a good estimator. And just Google College Board EFC calculator, and you can get your estimated EFC. And why it's important to know that number is you have to compare the EFC against the college costs of attendance. So if I'll give an example, if your EFC comes out to be $30,000 and the college cost of attendance is $70,000, then you have what they would call a financial need of $40,000. So in that case, you might want to look at schools that can offer need-based aid. because you're showing the college that you have a financial need. But in the case where your EFC might end up being 80,000 and the cost of attendance is 70,000, a college is going to look at that and say, you don't have financial need, and that's why you as a family know that you're going to need to look for schools that can offer your student merit. Otherwise, you might be left with paying the full sticker price, whatever that sticker price might be for the college. So for the schools that offer merit, there's always this question is, does your ability to pay impact whether or not your student might get merit? And it's a gray area. There's nothing that's going to flash on the website, that a college website, that says that they do this, but the reality is they kind of underhandedly know whether, like, kind of what your general income bracket is. Of course, they get a sense from just pure demographics and knowing what school your student went to and zip codes. But if you look at this chart, colleges are trying to attract the best students. That's that top 25%. So they're looking at, is your student's GPA, is your student's test scores in the top 25% of all the students that normally come to our school. And then if your student is one of those students applying in the top, quartile, they want to attract you, right? They want to attract your students. So that's why they're using merit scholarships to attract them. So if you're a student who is a top student and you're not going to receive need-based aid, you don't have need, and the college wants you, they're going to, offer probably the most merit that they can based on your, test scores and GPA. But as you can see, as you go further down that first column, you might be a family that can pay full price, but and your student might still get accepted to the college. But if their academic attractiveness isn't as strong, so their test scores and their GPA might be, kind of below the 50th percentile, again, they may be accepted. They're probably going to be offered less merit or no merit at all. And so that's why it's important to match and really find those schools where your student is at the top of the academic range that they're looking for. So there's a difference between getting in and then getting in and being offered merit money. And so colleges are just going after the students that are the most attractive to them. And again, I'm going to show you how you determine for each school what's the top 25th percentile. And then if your student fits the top 25th, is within that top 25 percentile, and the school gives merit, it's a good place that your student should consider applying, and a very good likelihood that they will get, the top merit offered. Okay, so I share this story just to say, and I won't kind of read it all. It's a true story. It's a true quote from a member in the Paying for College 101 Facebook group. And basically, and it goes down to being strategic about your college list. So their son applied to 6 schools. 4 of them were reach schools. They ended up basically getting in. The son got into 2 schools, and only one of them was financially viable for this family. So they went through the whole process, right? They probably should have had more financially affordable schools on the list. They probably should have had schools where the student was in that top 25th percentile that I talked about. And they are basically at the end of the process, and they don't have options to choose from. Their 2 options are the school that the student doesn't really want to go to, but they can afford, or the school that the student really wants to go to and they can't afford it. So, they're kind of in a tough situation. So that's why it's so important to really think through that college list, have options. And this isn't to say, and this question comes up a lot, should we not allow my student to apply to a school that we don't think we can afford? That to me is a little bit of a personal question, in that as long as you've had the discussion ahead of time about what you can afford, and then know that your student can apply there, and if they get in, you're still going to have to decide whether you can afford it. It's not a guarantee just because they got in that you'll be able to send them. So it's really about setting expectations. Okay, so now we're on to how do you build a college list? Why, what are some good tips to use when building the college list? As we've already discussed, it's important to know your EFC, because the EFC is going to help you figure out, are you a family where you're going to need to find the colleges that give need-based aid, or are you a family where you're not going to get any need, and so you have to find the colleges that can offer merit scholarships. The other thing I say is also know your budget. As Melissa kind of alluded to, and we didn't go into detail about how EFC is calculated. That's actually a different presentation and a different evening. But usually people are not happy with their EFC. Let's just be honest. They think it's more than they can afford. And I'm all with you. I agree. I sympathize, but that's the number that the colleges are using. And that's, so whatever your EFC is, that's the number, that's the minimum that they expect you to pay for college. You're not going to be usually paying less than that unless your student gets a full tuition scholarship or gets a great private scholarship. But so if your EFC might come out to be, let's say, $40,000, you can still decide, well, my family's budget is only, $30,000. And I say this because, again, I've seen a lot of situations where there's one mother in particular. She has 4 kids that she has to put through college, and she had a high EFC. I think actually her EFC might have been like in the 80,000, but she told her students or her kids that her budget was 35,000. And so what that meant was that they really needed to look for the schools that could give both merit scholarships and that also had a lower cost of attendance number to start with. So is it guaranteed that just whatever you decide your budget is, that you're going to find a college that the cost comes out to your budget? No, but you should think about what is your budget, and try and aim for colleges that have a cost of attendance that might be close to it, or if you student got merit, you were close to it. So just these are all these numbers to know: the cost of attendance, your EFC, and your family budget, and they're all going to be 3 different numbers.
Hey, Debbie, what if you have multiples going, like, so you have like twins or triplets going into their freshman year at the same time?
Yeah. So unfortunately, the government calculation for EFC used to take into account that if you had multiple students in school at the same time, they would take whatever your family contribution would be, and they would kind of split it in half and say, your family's contribution, your EFC was 60,000, then that really meant that one student had an EFC of 30,000 and the other had an EFC of 30,000. There are changes that are coming to how that EFC is calculated. In fact, just from a terminology standpoint, they're changing it to call it the Student Aid Index. And actually, I think one of the reasons why they changed it from family contribution to Student Aid Index is because now this is truly just for your student. It's not based on the family, which is related to the example that we're talking about. And in this change, a big change, which people are still fighting, although I'm not quite sure that will be successful, is that each student's aid index is going to be calculated independent of whether or not they have another sibling in school at the same time. So in that case, I think going forward, unfortunately, for families with multiples, that your student's individual EFC, or going forward student aid index, is going to be higher than if they had gone to college, in the past few years. Oops, sorry. So just moving along quickly, when you start a college search, my recommendation is that you start with what I call a wide net. Don't get caught up with, my student wants to go to a school that has a great football, team, or even honestly that they want to go in certain locations of the country. You might be able to narrow it down to that, but be open-minded at the beginning of the search, particularly if you're chasing merit, as the woman early on, said. that if you're chasing merit, then honestly, merit is the priority, not necessarily at the beginning of your search, not necessarily the location. So I'm going to show you how you start the search, and you just are going to look for those colleges where your student is at the top of the academic range and that they give merit. And that's all you should care about. And then look at those colleges and then start to whittle it down. Okay, I'm going to jump a little bit ahead because we're running close to the hour. So what I'm going to jump and show and demo you is a tool that we've created called College Insights. And what it does is it really helps to do all this research that I've been talking about. And we compiled data from 3 different sources, which you can go to some of these sources on their own, but they become very cumbersome to kind of deal with. One of the sources is called the Common Data Set. Every school shares this information. Almost every school shares it publicly. Some schools who haven't shared it publicly have been getting into trouble lately. But you can see an individual school's common data set by just Googling, Tulane Common Data Set. And you will see it. It's great. You should see it. It's got a ton of information. But there's not really one place where you can see common data set information from all colleges at once. So that's why we compiled that together. The other source of information that we use is from the government. Again, a free source of information, IPEDS. You can go to the IPEDS website and search, but because it's government data, it's not always that easy to see what they have. And then the last source of information is information that we have been collecting right now, probably for the past 4 or 5 years. And I call it crowdsourced information. It's actual real offers that students receive, and this is the time of year that they've been receiving it, and they share that information back to us, and we've basically compiled it. We have honestly probably over 10,000 offers from 1,500 schools, and you can see actual offers, and you can see that students got, and then you see the student's profile. So it gives you a sense of how much money the school is actually giving and the type of students that they're giving it to. So Melissa, let's see. Oh, I'm sharing, so I can stop sharing.
Love it. Yeah, yeah, I know. Our whole plan is messed up tonight, Deb.
Right.
But your picture's fantastic. We're
Okay, so let me jump to.
Well, Debbie's pulling up the tool too. Some of your schools may use a tool, high schools may use a tool called Naviance. And so a lot of the information is put in there also based on what GPAs and scores got into those colleges your student's looking at from that school with similar characteristics. And the logon and the password are usually your students. So you'll have to ask them to sit down and show it to you, but it's a great tool depending if your school is a Naviance school or not.
So this is College Insights, and it's just collegeinsights.roachcollege.com. There is a free version of it, and I'll, but what I actually am going to show you is that there's a paid monthly version. The free version lets you do a lot of the searching that I'm going to show you. It just doesn't let you do all the searching, and it doesn't show you all the data, but it gives you a definitely good sense of how the tool works. So let me just log in. Okay, so this is actually, let me go back. Okay, so if you were to log in and you need to create an account first, and then basically it brings you in. There's lots of different ways you can search. You can search by an individual college. Sometimes, you might already know that your student's really interested in, a particular college. I'll just put in Tulane. Oops. And it pulls up a lot of the information that is, are kind of around the internet. There's a video you can see of what Tulane's all about. You can, link directly to the website. It has some of the deadlines that we talked about. It doesn't. We unfortunately don't have merit scholarship specific deadlines, but it has the early decision, early action deadlines, and then it has information particular to need-based aid and merit scholarship information. So basically here, this is saying Tulane has 69% of their freshmen do not get need. So that means 69% of the freshmen potentially are full pay families, but of those families, 48% of them get some sort of merit, and the average merit that they receive is 16,000. Again, it's an average, so there could be some that receive more, some that receive less. And then if you want to see some of the crowdsourced offers, this is, we have them back until 2020. This is actually from this season. These are actual offers that families, students shared. We categorize them or group them by EFC level. Again, that kind of relates to that slide I showed you. Depending on what your EFC is, you may or may not get the same amount of aid than another family. So I would find your EFC level. And again, knowing it's Tulane, you can see that there's a lot of families that are above the 60,000 EFC level that are getting the merit. And it tells you what state the student's from, what GPA they had, if they submitted a test score to Tulane. So the students here, like in offer number 13, they didn't submit any test scores to Tulane. They had a 3.8 GPA and they got $8,000. But you can see some of the students with a slightly lower GPA, but they submitted their test scores, got more money. So this just kind of gives you a peek into the types of students that are being accepted and also who's receiving money. Here's an example. This sticks out, offer 20. This student received $30,000 in merit. They were probably obviously a top student from academically. They had a 36 ACT and they had a 4.0 GPA. So you can see that there is a range of what Tulane is offering and by just looking at these real offers. So, okay, let me go back. So, so another part of the tool is advanced search. And here's where you can find the schools where your student is at the top of the academic range. Again, you can put in a major here if you want that your student is interested in. You could put a location that you want, but I would really highly recommend that you start without putting in those filters and just go towards, if your student has a test score, or if you want to just see what different test scores can get you, just let's put in a test score range of 28 to 30, and then make sure you click this little button that says include the schools where the test score falls within the top range. This is that, it's either called the 75th percentile or the top 25th group, and we're just going to search like that. And there are, in this case, we put no other filters in. There are 267 colleges in the US, right, that where the test score of 28 to 30 is in that top range. And then you can search through all these schools. What we also do is you can now sort them. So of these schools, I might want to sort which of these schools from high to low, what their average merit aid is.
And Deb, quick question, are the GPAs in there weighted or unweighted?
Such a good question. Actually, the majority of them are unweighted because this information, a lot of it is pulled from the common data set. And most information presented in the common data set for GPAs is unweighted. I say most, there's like a handful of schools that actually identify that their GPA is weighted. And they, in our tool here, there would be a little asterisk that would say like, and it would say W next to it. And that would mean that that GPA is weighted. But unless the school identifies it, technically they're sharing their GPA as an unweighted number. So I just sorted this list, right, of 267 schools by average merit aid. So the top school here is Beloit College. They give 41,000 as average merit. So if you have a student who has a test score of 28 to 30, you know that if they apply to Beloit, they probably have a good chance of getting in. And if they get in, actually, it's, I don't want to say guaranteed because that's not like a good word, but they're basically, this is saying that 100% of the students who don't have need will get merit, and their average is 41,000. So that would be a school I would at least bookmark and put on my list to then save and look at a little bit later. So you can sort all of these results by these different criteria. I can look at which one has early admit rates and sort them. I can look at, I can look at four-year graduation rate, which has good ones, or maybe I want to make sure that I delete the ones that aren't good. So this is a great way to build your list, and you can bookmark these and you can name your lists. And let me just show you one other thing, because I know we're running out of time. Once you create a list, you come to My Lists, and then you can see even more data on it. So we have this table here, and you can pull up as much data as you want on the list that you've already on the colleges you've bookmarked. And you can scroll through. I'm just going to scroll through to the section on merit. And there's a lot of good data here. And then you can be sorting these schools even more. So, I want to sort this list. Oh, it's already in. Oh, no, it's not. Sorry, not working. Okay, yep, there it goes. So I just sorted the list by which of the schools that I bookmarked give the highest merit aid. And I could be looking at, I might want to look at what the early decision rates are for these schools, or early action rates. So I can come here and I can sort that differently. But here is how you kind of went from a big, wide net searching, and then you started to bookmark, and then you're going to come further and further down to make smaller and smaller lists. And you can create multiple lists here. You can name them however you want. It could be based on any criteria you want. But
can people export that into Excel, or does it have to stay within the tool?
Great question. We are like 2 weeks away from giving that option of being able to export it. So yes, you'll be able to export it. So hopefully that this tonight gives you a sense of what merit scholarships are, why it's so important to understand which schools offer it, where your student is most likely to be given a merit scholarship, understanding the deadlines, and if you want to, give College Insights a try, give it a shot and see what information is in there that's helpful for you to build a college list.
Yeah, and one of the questions that came earlier, so Deb, great content, we love the tool. One of the questions that came in earlier too was like, how many schools should my student apply to? She only wants to get into one. And Debbie talked about this at the beginning of the presentation, but you should absolutely have at least say 3 to 5, but have one be, what we used to call the safety school. Have one be that that your student probably will get in there and is likely, going to be at the top of the food chain or the top of the admissions chain there. And it gives you an idea of how much merit you would get from a school that they may be, say, overqualified for. So you can compare the differences when you get them in. If you're at the super elite level, that's always not the case. One of the questions was like, who doesn't offer merits? It's usually the super elites. It just depends on your student, but admissions is the best place to start. And as Debbie said, student admissions counselors love that the student is interested in the school, and you will be assigned an admissions counselor when they start engaging, and they can ask that admissions counselor anything. Yep. So all of the questions, we had great questions in the chat tonight, can be answered by the specific admissions counselor once you're in the process.
So I'm just scanning through some of these questions. Somebody asked about something called Raise Me, which I won't go into detail, but if Lauren, you know what it is, it's a micro scholarship. It is actually the same thing as merit scholarships. So if your student might get a micro scholarship from Raise Me, it would be instead of a merit scholarship. It's not going to be both of them together.
Good question. I had never heard of that till tonight.
Yeah.
So we're at time, a little bit over. Again, everyone, thank you for bearing with us through our technical difficulties tonight. We don't have a IT group on a Sunday, but
Right.
advice and your suggestions to us. And as a reminder, a lot of resources and articles are available at sofi.com/learn. We have a big library full of articles about applying to college and definitions of aid, the FAFSA, understanding that. So that's available for free to everyone in here tonight. And we look forward to seeing you on our next program.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, sorry I can't see everybody, but it was great to have you here. Thank you, Melissa. Always fun.
And again, Deb, your picture's great and you're getting a lot of kudos. So
Thanks.
I'm going to put the URL right here and we'll see everybody soon.
Sounds good. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.